So here we have a function, it's g of x. We have no idea what its explicit equation is. It doesn't look like any of the new graphs that we've learned, and it doesn't look like one that we know. It looks like just a bunch of lines joined together. So here we have g of x. We want to sketch the graph, or sketch the image graph, after each of these translations, 4 units up, or 4 units left, and 1 unit up. After we do that, it says, write the equation in terms of the function g. So this is one of these times where I say one of the things in math that you have to really pay attention to is the language. Okay? Because often you're going to just wait for the teacher to say, okay, he's going to help solve it, I'll watch, and then when I get a similar question, I'm going to do the same thing. And what you're doing is you're mimicking, which is not a bad thing, but if you're not paying attention to the language while you're doing that, what's going to happen is you're going to get to a quiz, you're going to get to a test, and you're going to go, what does it mean when it says write the equation in terms of g? Because you weren't paying attention to that language at that time. So you're not only learning a bunch of math, you're also learning a fair bit of English because you need to know what does that mean in this context. And for a lot of these things, they only happen in a math class, so those English phrases and stuff you have to learn for that math class. Now, if we're moving this in a 4 units to the left, and I'll do that in blue, all we have to do is take each of these points, shift them 4 units to the left, 2, 3, 4, that would be there, there. Connect the dots because it's going to be the same shape, and there we have our graph. And if I do the 1 unit up in green, this is where it's nice to have a smartboard. You're just going to take this and shift it 1 unit up. So now, what it means to write the equation of the image graph in terms of g, well, it says write an equation. So we're going to say for the blue one, it's going to be y equals, what's happened to that blue graph from the red graph? The red graph was moved 4 to the left. How do we write that in function notation? Will there be something inside the function or outside of the function? It'll be inside. And to move it 4 to the left, it'll be plus 4. So everything that's inside the function is sort of always opposite. If you see it to the left, it's plus 4. To the right, it would be minus. But everything outside of the function is exactly as you see it. So for our green graph, which has been moved up 1, that would happen outside of our function. So we would have our function, g of x, and then we would add 1. So it happens outside, and it's exactly as you think. Everything that happens to the y, if it's up 1, it's plus. If it's down, it's minus. Finally, the question says, state the domain and range of each function. So again, I'm going to color code this. I'm going to do the domain of our original function and the range of our original function. I'm going to switch between some questions I'll use interval notation, some questions I'll use set notation, so that way throughout the year you get comfortable with both of them. So for this one, I'm going to use set notation. For the domain goes in the red one from -1 is the smallest x value to 6 is the biggest x value. So we would write that as -1 to 6. For the range, the smallest y value is 2, the largest y value is 5. So you would write that from 2 less than or equal to y less than or equal to 5. I'm going to just put the interval notation underneath. So because it's less than or equal, you would use square brackets. Use square brackets when a value is included, and round brackets when a value isn't included. So this is how you would write those in interval notation. Now when we go to our blue graph, what's changed? It was moved 4 to the left. So now our domain, the smallest value, is -5. And our largest value is 2. For our range, still the smallest value is 2. And the largest value is 5. And finally, for our green graph, our smallest value is -1. And our largest value is 6. And for our range, our smallest value is 3. And our largest value is 6. Now, I got all of those domains and ranges by looking at the graph. One of the things you're going to find when you get to your exam or you get to review questions or even homework questions is this course likes to see, do you understand what's happening if we take away one of the pieces of information? So this question started with the graphs, and then once we got the graphs, we could get the equations. And because we had the graphs, we could do the domain and range. Sometimes they're going to take away the graph. And they're going to say the original domain and range without telling you what the graph looks like. If you had this blue equation, y equals g of x plus 4, can you see how you could go from this original domain to this domain? What's happened? Everything got moved 4 to the left. So our smallest value at -1 became -5. Our largest value at 6, 4 to the left would mean that our largest value is now 2. Notice that it's the x that changed, so our range stayed exactly the same there. Wouldn't even had to look at the graph because you know that when you're moving something left and right, your y values don't change. And same thing with the green one. Notice the green one, the x values didn't change from the original, but your y values moved all up 1. So sometimes you're going to see one aspect and have to deal with, okay, how does that affect its domain and range? So it's really important that we're trying to understand how these things are connected. What I'm also going to do, after we've done a question, I'm going to give you a list of questions that you would now be able to do from the homework. So you can now do 4, 5, 6, and 7. The homework or the questions that are related to a lesson are always at the end of that lesson, so I think you just have to turn a couple of pages and you can see where 4, 5, 6, and 7. And the answers are always at the end of those homework questions or those practice questions, so you can check how you're doing.